Welcome, everybody. This is the Full Court Press. Your host, Cal Lee from the Baseline. And my goodness, oh gracious, man, let me tell you something. NBA is the hottest commodity right now, blowing up on your social media dive. And so I'm loving every single minute of it. This is why we have the Full Court Press, because we love applying cranial pressure on everything that's going on in the NBA. And, of course, with everything that's happened in the last 48 hours, I had to be able to get a nice expert on there who's kind of really keeping his finger on the trigger, ready to pull out the everything that's going on. And I got my man EJ Ayala, represented for Basketball Insiders. EJ is the consummate professional, always in the know with everything going on in the NBA. Good evening tonight, Mr. EJ Ayala.
How's it going, Cal? Always nice to be on the Baseline.
Most definitely, man. And first of all, what was your interpretation? And obviously, we're going to talk about it because it's still going to get talked about. But what was your interpretation of the domino effect with regards to LeBron James making his decision, and the overall impact that it's actually had for you guys who've been working around the clock, giving everybody the 411 on stuff going on with the free agent transactions and trades that have been happening like at a frenzy?
It's had a big impact. I mean, big fish got to eat first. I mean, that's just kind of how it works in the league, and there's no bigger fish than LeBron James in the NBA. I mean, for once that was a decision that was made, him coming back home to the Cavs, and that was solidified, it really kind of opened up the doors. A lot of teams were in a holding pattern. Everybody was waiting to see what would happen, and as soon as that got figured out, that's exactly when the rest of the chips started falling with Bosh and Melo and everybody else. So it's been a feeding frenzy with NBA news, and you got to love it. So.
Did you make that prediction that you knew that LeBron James was really going to make that move to Cleveland? I mean, amongst you and all of your colleagues, was it really across the board that as long as this thing continued to keep dragging on, that percentage about him re-signing back with the Miami Heat just continually kept diminishing?
You had this feeling that the longer that it dragged out, the odds of him maybe not ending up back in South Beach was very probable, because if he really wanted just to come back, you would have expected to see some type of moves made by the Heat that really would make him enticed, to come back and play with the team, play for another ship, but just didn't really pan out that way. And so you got to kind of take a look at it from his perspective. He wanted to put pressure on ownership to really build a team down there. And he always had that feeling like he wanted to come back home. I was still surprised a little bit that it was the Cavs, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think it makes for a good story.
Really, you were surprised that it was actually the Cavs that were in the running? Who would you have who would you have thought would have been the team that he was going to eventually sign to if he wasn't going to do with the Heat?
Well, here's the thing with that is, I always just pictured him as a big market guy. I really just thought he was just going to, re-sign back with the Heat. I just felt like that is a good environment. I just really thought the relationship that he had with Pat Riley, with Spoelstra, with D-Wade. I mean, D-Wade was hanging out with him in the plane before the decision even went down. I mean, they were hanging out together before he went to Brazil to go watch the World Cup. And I just thought, after the entire drama of where is he going to go, it was just going to have him coming back to the Heat, is what it was going to end up being. But it just didn't pan out that way. But everybody was, there was a lot of, whispers about, his homie, his friend, Maverick Carter, all those guys that he's been working with, Rich Paul, his manager. They've been already kind of had whisperings that they were going to bring him back home to Cleveland. And when his wife, tweeted out, a picture of Akron, Ohio, before, right after the season ended, people didn't want to look into it too much. Now you always want to wonder what that was all about. So.
Yeah, I found that very, very interesting how everything kind of transpired, and like we were just discussing a little bit earlier, this is a domino effect. When the best player in the game pretty much has the league in the palm of his hand, a lot of players are going to have to stand pat and wait. But it's kind of interesting because that might have actually been a good thing for some players, guys like Chris Bosh, guys like Chandler Parsons, who I know we're going to get into in a little bit. But really the biggest talk that's now taking place in the aftermath with regards to LeBron James, aside from the max contract given to Chris Bosh, has been the fact that Lance Stevenson has announced that he is going to play for the Charlotte Hornets and not play for the Indiana Pacers. Now, the reports were that the initial deal that was offered by the Pacers was a 5-year, $44 million deal. Lance Stevenson's camp felt, I guess through many sources, they said that they were somewhat insulted by that offer. And then here comes the Charlotte Hornets, who I have to give Charlotte. They have been so active in this free agency, and they really came out of nowhere and have just been, and let me just be blunt, they've been effing everything up with other teams and these guys, because while people are not taking into consideration about the idea of Charlotte, let's remember Charlotte is still a viable market. Charlotte had always been a viable market when it comes to basketball, and I think the fact that they have renamed themselves back the Hornets after taking off that Bobcats nonsense, they now are seriously trying to make play to say, take us seriously, especially in that Southeast division has now become vulnerable with the status of the Miami Heat. So, EJ, I got to ask you, man, Lance Stevenson taking this 3-year deal, $27.5 million, with that third year being an option, big move. Do you buy into Lance Stevenson in him making this kind of play?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Lance Stevenson, this is a guy that back in the day I remember seeing on the cover of Dime magazine as a high schooler with a caption on the cover that said "Born Ready." A lot of people would crown him as a guy that would be a perennial NBA All-Star from jump. He had a man's body, and he was playing with boys. He always believed in himself. There's anything that you can say about about Lance Stevens, he has a swagger about himself. Might rub people the wrong way, might rub teammates the wrong way, even in practice. But he always has supreme confidence in himself, and this is what this deal is all about: is the confidence that he has in himself. Because they were offering reportedly a longer deal, 5-year deal, less average money per year. Which they wanted to lock him in, and knowing he was a supreme talent, at a very feasible, contract. So I can understand where obviously the Pacers are coming from, but he's wanting a shorter term deal, which they weren't willing to give him for that much money. I mean, he's going to be averaging probably a little bit more per year, even though it's a shorter deal. With this Hornets deal that he's taken right now, because he thinks he can hit the open market within a short amount of time when he's elevated his game, so that he can cash in on that.
It's kind of like the Joe Flacco effect. Joe Flacco betted on himself in the biggest stage, which was the Super Bowl, and he came out and he performed. And you can't argue a team like the Baltimore Ravens with their intent to say, we need to keep him. He's our franchise guy. We're not going to let this guy go somewhere else and become successful, regardless of what or how well he may have done or badly he would have done in the regular season. He performed when it counted the most, and he brought a title to Baltimore. And I'm thinking that the idea is, if you got a Charlotte Hornets team that just made the playoffs last year, and they made the playoffs impressively. It wasn't like they inked, kind of crawled in like the Atlanta Hawks did. They decisively had came in, and many could argue it was probably the third best team in the second half of that season in the Eastern Conference with the way that they performed. Many people felt that had Al Jefferson stayed healthy, some of the complementary players maybe stepped up and contributed, they really would have given the Miami Heat something of a run. Now, I'm not saying it would have beaten them, but it would have given them a run. So now you add a guy like Stevenson, who is basically a walking triple-double, definitely can help the team as far as facilitating the basketball, take the pressure off of Kemba Walker, get that ball down to their big man Al Jefferson. And then you look at a couple of the complementary pieces that they've already added for this team. They've deepened themselves as far as scoring goes, getting P.J. Harrison. You got to really start looking at this Charlotte Hornets team as a legitimate threat in a wide-open Southeastern division and a wide-open Eastern Conference.
I really do like the Hornets. I think that ever since Michael Jordan made the decision to really let Rich Cho handle things over there and kind of have a little more responsibility for just kind of taking the advice of his own guys that they hire, not really trying to force all the hands with the transactions himself. That team has really started to make some aggressive, calculated moves that have been really paying off, starting with a couple of guys that they've been drafting. The drafts have started getting a little better. Kemba Walker has been doing a pretty good job out there. Gerald Henderson's coming into his own. And then you also, of course, see the move of, committing a lot of money to Al Jefferson, which, he was out here in Salt Lake City, with my hometown Jazz, and he was a fan favorite. I mean, he's a guy that you can drop the ball to in the low post, and he's going to get you buckets, guaranteed.
Most definitely. Talking with my man EJ Ayala from Basketball Insiders. You can also catch him on the Twitter side, but definitely check out his articles. He represents lovely for www.basketballinsiders.com. As we continue forward with our conversation, Lance Stevenson again. This is really an unprecedented move. Let me ask you something. Do you really think that he's really he's buying into his own hype as well too, with regards to this renegotiated TV deal? Because we understand that that's the same move that LeBron James is making by going short term, even though he has verbally made some kind of commitment that he's going to re-sign back with the Cavaliers. And I'm not saying that Lance Stevenson is a loyal type of guy or anything, but if he does find instant success within the first 2 years of the Charlotte Hornets, do you find that being a viable team that he really should continue to play for? Will this predicate a lot about where he might want to go afterwards? Should should things not work out there in Charlotte?
I think if they show him the money, he'll stay. I mean, I think the whole premise of this does have a lot to do with the new upcoming TV deal that is about to go down here at the end of the 2015-2016 season. I mean, right now, the NBA is trying to double the money for their TV rights, which is going to essentially, it's going to happen with Turner, with Disney, ABC. They're going to double that money. It's happened with all the other sports right now, which means that's going to increase the salary cap. Increased salary cap means more money coming to these guys, and so they're willing to bank on that. I think it's a smart decision, and when you're talking about millions of dollars, there's the basketball side and there's the business side. It's hard for a lot of these guys to turn down those millions.
Yeah, so Lance Stevenson, rather than him blowing in LeBron James's ear, he might be blowing money off the negotiating table by the time these 3 years is up. Let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit. And there's been a report recently, as probably as early as even this evening, with regards to the status of the Kevin Love situation in Cleveland. Earlier, after the Cleveland Cavaliers had drafted Andrew Wiggins, there were reports that came out that once LeBron James decided that he was going to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers, Kevin Love comes out and, he makes his proclamation about, I would love to go play with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then obviously the Minnesota Timberwolves are like, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll make that happen as long as the Cavaliers at some point talk about giving us Andrew Wiggins. And then obviously the Cleveland Cavaliers have been stonewalling that notion that they want to actually give up Andrew Wiggins in any kind of trade that would involve a marquee type player like a Kevin Love. I got to ask you this question now, EJ. Now with the Cavaliers rescinding that perception that they wouldn't consider moving Andrew Wiggins, and that they now have made this proclamation that there is that possibility that they can do it, or they are willing to do it for Kevin Love. Who really is now in control of this situation? Is it really more so to the point now that the Cleveland Cavaliers know and understand that they're doing this because LeBron wants this, or is it really to the fact that they were trying to stonewall the Minnesota Timberwolves to see how far they can lowball them?
Well, I mean, to that, in that regard, I would say who's in control of the situation. I don't think it's a coincidence that as soon as we start hearing reports of, LeBron James trying to kind of reach out to Kevin Love to find out and gauge his interest in playing with him, that all of a sudden the Cavaliers are a little more amenable of trying to maybe acquire Kevin Love and willing to part ways with Andrew Wiggins. I mean, LeBron has all the leverage here. He came back on a short-term deal. They're going to want to keep him there. They're not going to want the same situation that happened when he left the first time around because he didn't have the help that he wanted. They're going to want to put him into a spot where they can give him a chance to win, and he wants to win now. And if there's anything that's going to make that a fairy tale ending there in Cleveland, is for him to bring a championship to the Cavaliers in the next couple of years. And the best way to do that is not with a rookie.
So now, if you're Andrew Wiggins, are you frowning, or are you kind of smiling a little bit because something like this may actually go down where he now gets moved out of Cleveland?
It's tough to say. What I can tell you is, as a guy coming into the league, would it be nice to play with the best player in the NBA, learn from him? Of course. Would you rather also be the featured guy where it's all about you? You're the main attraction, the opportunity to shine. Maybe so. I think most guys that come into the league as a rookie, they have their sights set on coming to the NBA since they were kids, and they weren't really having this idea of playing second fiddle when they got to the league.
And so it was my perception, and I know that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about this, but I've been kind of yelling this off from the pulpit that if I'm Andrew Wiggins and I've been touted as the best player, or the next best player, the next best thing, I'm in a big brouhaha between being the 1 or 2 against Jabari Parker, and suddenly the Cleveland Cavaliers decide to say, I'm going to take you, Andrew Wiggins. I got to feel that there's a level of competitiveness and greatness, and to already want to prove to people that I'm one of the best players in the game. And if that is the case, that means I got to play against the best player in the game. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the idea that if you are going to be great, that you learn from greatness. But, I go back to guys like Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant. They've had opportunities to play against the best players in the game just simply because that team or that organization believed more in that player. So what you're now basically saying is, EJ, and I'm not saying that you are saying it, but I'm just saying what the consensus is basically giving out is that they believe more in the fact that Kevin Love, LeBron James, can win that championship than LeBron James giving Andrew Wiggins really that understanding, that feel to play next to that greatness, and maybe eclipse that perception that greatness can be made by them trying to pursue a championship with that type of combination.
That's basically what the general feeling is right now. There's very few rookies, regardless of how great they've been, that have been able to come into a situation and really lead their team to a championship in their first or second season. I think one of the only few that I can think of is maybe Magic Johnson. And aside from that, all the other greats, it's and of course, Tim Duncan, but he had the Admiral to help with that. So.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's flip it to the other side now. You're the Minnesota Timberwolves. I like to think that right now you are definitely in the driver's seat because while the Cavaliers were stonewalling, right, other teams now feel like they may have an insider's chance to represent offers that maybe Minnesota wouldn't have been considering that now might actually look pretty good. So now we hear talks that the Golden State Warriors are still have the inside track, and really the main piece or the main person that is kind of blocking it up is the idea that the Warriors don't want to give up Klay Thompson. I think it's really just it's interesting because what this comes down to is, which team is actually ready to roll the dice and gamble on the unknown, which is Kevin Love, because you and I both know that while we both love Kevin Love's game, can we honestly say that Kevin Love's game is going to transcend another team, is going to put that team in that echelon of us saying they're automatic, runners for that NBA title? Forget the conference. This is the situation that could put them over the top. Are we really sold on that? Is Golden State truly sold on the idea that they're going to auction off half of their team basically just to get Kevin Love?
I don't think Golden State is sold on it. I think that's part of the reason why they haven't pulled the trigger already. They already know what the Timberwolves want. The Timberwolves want a very big package. They've been very hesitant to move Klay Thompson. Stephen Curry does not want Klay Thompson moved. They want to keep the Splash Brothers together. Steve Kerr likes Klay Thompson. It's going to be one of those things that I think they're going to let the season play out. I mean, there's no real sense of urgency to make a deal for Kevin Love right now. And I said this, the last time that we talked when people were asking if Kevin Love was going to get moved during the draft. A lot of people felt like he was. I felt like it wasn't going to happen. It's not going to happen until they really have the exact packages that they want. And you have to take into consideration, Flip Saunders is coaching that team now. They're basically putting a target on his back right now to win, and you're not going to win a lot of games if you deal the best player in the trade for a couple spare parts most of the time. So if that's why they're holding out to see what kind of package they can get. It has to be worth it.
That couldn't have been well said, EJ, and I completely agree with you. I think people are just misplacing the idea that a guy like Kevin Love is talking in the same context as LeBron James, and there's no comparison. LeBron James has already proven as to why he can hold a organization handicapped, that he has to be priority number one. Unfortunately, Kevin Love has not given himself that opportunity because he doesn't bring anything to the table except really impressive numbers. And that's not to say that he can't groom himself to be that way. But even as we speak right now, he's just in a bad situation where the Minnesota Timberwolves can ill afford to do what they did when they gave up Kevin Garnett, which is go through another 5 or 6 more years of mediocrity, not make the playoffs, not really dazzle anybody, and basically continue to keep sifting and searching through bad picks before they find the right combination of a winning tandem. And really, it couldn't have come at a worse time because the murderer's row that is the Western Conference is not yielding any forgiveness whatsoever. You're tuned to the Full Court Press. Cal Lee with my special guest EJ Ayala from the Basketball Insiders. Continue to check us out, man. My show, The Baseline, with my man Warren Shaw. We are available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. We always love giving you the hot button topics of the NBA, discussing free agency talk. So we can continue to check us out there. And as we continue forward with my conversation with the illustrious EJ Ayala, let's go ahead and switch gears a little bit back over to that Western Conference. And interesting situation that's happened with the Dallas Mavericks, the Houston Rockets. I'm telling you, man, I hashtagged it, called it the cruel summer for the Houston Rockets because you really could not have had a worse attempt at your free agency moves for Daryl Morey and company. And the fact that they lost Chandler Parsons, I think people are thinking that we're looking at this just from a player perspective. I'm looking at this from a team chemistry and culture perspective, that Chandler Parsons was really the glue for that team. And I think them losing Chandler Parsons is really going to hurt them a whole lot more than the perception is if they can get on past that situation. What is your feeling about Chandler Parsons, him taking that max deal to Dallas, Rockets not opting to take his option, then not opting to match the offer? This whole mess that's just basically happened. What's your take on it?
My take on it is, right now, I mean, Daryl Morey, he is a genius. He's a very, very smart man. But a lot of the kind of the culture of developing that team chemistry can definitely be affected by these moves. Chandler Parsons really loved being in Houston. He loved his teammates. He helped recruit.
AJ, you with us? I believe EJ may have frozen on us and it could have possibly dropped out. So I think that what EJ was alluding to. Are you still there, EJ?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. You kind of froze up on us. So if you could, you were alluding to the fact that Chandler Parsons was like the glue for that team, especially over the course of the last couple of years. So go ahead and chime in on what you were also kind of giving our audience an understanding of with regards to Chandler Parsons and what he contributes to the team.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was that glue guy, for the Rockets. And the thing about him is he did a lot of things on the court that I think are going to be a little hard to replace. He with his size, the way that he kind of was able to defend and also be an offensive player. His passing was very underrated on that team. He was a consummate teammate. I mean, even off the court, he's hanging out with these guys on the regular. A lot of these guys were almost best friends. He ended up taking this deal with the Mavericks, and he was a little miffed by the way that everything went down. I mean, Daryl Morey came on and made a comment to where he said you have to be the one to find the Chandler Parsons, not the one to give the Chandler Parsons the max contracts. And that right there, I mean, if I'm Chandler Parsons and I'm listening to that, that'd probably get to me too. So I mean, it'd be hard to take that as a guy that you've really kind of put your all into it. He's going to come into Dallas with a chip on his shoulder because he's going to want to prove that he thought he could be that guy. And the entire time, the Rockets are out there looking for a third star, where he felt like he was a third star on the wings, waiting to develop and really come into his own. Now he has a chance to prove that with the Mavericks.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting and I read some of the quotes that were given to Yahoo Sports after Parsons had found out that the Rockets were not going to match the offer and he was going to wind up being a Dallas Maverick. He basically kind of highlighted, and he really handled it very classy. I will give him that much because I said it was the Ian Kisler effect. To find out that your name is being swirled around in trade rumors, to find out that your name is being thrown around because you're not considered that third star with a team that is as talented as the Houston Rockets is at this point, and their intent is they're trying to upgrade, and at the expense, you're the person that becomes expendable towards that upgrade. Really got to tick you off if you're a competitive player. He comes in as a second-round pick, but he's a second-round pick with first-round talent, and I think that's the part that kind of gets missed. If you're the Houston Rockets, this is the same situation that happened with the New York Knicks at that time with Jeremy Lin. Now, I'm not saying that Jeremy Lin is first-round talent, but what I'm saying is Jeremy Lin's offensive capabilities helped the Knicks so much so that even in the offseason, at a premium, you get something back for this guy. And if you are the Houston Rockets and you're not looking to intentionally keep him, and everyone already knows the semantics regarding why Daryl Morey did what he did, but the point is that at the end of the day, he really didn't get anything back for it except backlash, because now all you got was Trevor Ariza, who is again another question mark on after he signs contracts, and you've got a team that immediately wants to win now. And to your point, Chandler brings things to the table that really can be ill afforded to be replaced if the rest of the other team is not going to step up and make up for what Chandler Parsons is obviously not going to be able to contribute for them on the basketball court. Interesting quote. He says, you can't knock him for always trying to get better. This is him talking about Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey is very aggressive, is a genius, a great GM, and I have nothing but respect for those guys, and they're looking to make their team better. That's what they're doing. I just thought I could have been that guy to do it. And so, if you're Chandler Parsons and you're now playing with one of the great shooters in the game in Dirk Nowitzki, how much of the pressure now is on Chandler Parsons with this max deal with the Dallas Mavericks, and how much of this now is on the Houston Rockets because they lost Chandler Parsons?
I think right now the pressure is more on the Rockets than it is on Parsons, and let me tell you why. I mean, the Rockets swung and missed in free agency more than once. They didn't land any of the big stars that they wanted to get. That was the entire reason for making a lot of the moves that they made. I mean, they basically let a Sheik go for almost nothing. He's a talented big. That was another guy that was disgruntled in Houston. But he's going to go over there to another team. He's probably going to play a lot better because he's going to be happier. Then you have the whole situation with Jeremy Lin. I mean, he got traded away. He was the guy that could still contribute. And then, of course, I mean, you have the situation with Parsons, and now he's going to go with the Mavericks, and they don't really have anything other than cap space to show for it. So, are the Rockets a better team now than they were a few weeks ago? No, they're not. Can they make a deal with this cap space in the future? And maybe we'll talk about it later that they made the right move, possibly. But it's still the cards are not. Are yet to be revealed on that. And right now, I think Parsons is going to go to the Mavericks, and is he going to be better than what he was with the Rockets? I don't know, but I think he'll be consistent. I think he'll be able to maintain the same level of play. He doesn't strike me as a guy, especially now with his chip on his shoulder, that's going to get a big contract and just fall off the map.
All right, you're tuned to the Full Court Press. Cal Lee with my special guest, EJ Ayala from BasketballInsiders.com. Be sure to check out my man, EJ Ayala. He writes some great articles. www.basketballinsiders.com. He's a Newsline editor, and he is always keeping himself ready to go when it comes to giving us the 411 on all of the news, breaking news, free agency news with regards to the NBA. Let's go ahead and talk about the Sacramento Kings. You know, this team has really had an interesting offseason, and because of all of the major names that are being thrown around, we're not talking about some of the transactions that the Sacramento Kings have made over the course of the last couple of weeks. And, you know, I think part of it starts by this really weird decision by them not keeping Isaiah Thomas. He now winds up in a sign and trade deal to the Phoenix Suns. And then now that there's talks that the Sacramento Kings are also resuming talks with the Detroit Pistons in the means to possibly acquire Josh Smith. If you can kind of map out or blueprint out, you know, let's put our GPS tracker on where Sacramento is going with this, man. I mean, where is the roadmap leading to for the Sacramento Kings with these moves that they've been making in this offseason so far?
You know, the Kings right now, they're looking for a culture change. They're looking for having a totally different vibe than what they've had in the past with this new owner. The new owner that they have right now is really looking to put his stamp on this team, and that's going to be not only in the draft, but also with free agency. Right now, the Kings letting go Isaiah Thomas and obviously, you know, making that deal is really, I think, foreshadowing for something else to happen in the future. You don't make a move like that unless you are thinking a couple moves ahead of maybe potentially doing some other type of deal down the road. Josh Smith is a guy that, you know, Jay Smooth, everybody knows his game, everybody knows his weaknesses. But I think that he definitely would still be a guy that could come in and provide a lot of athleticism, some defensive playmaking with his blocking. Maybe hopefully not stand out, you know, chucking threes at the three-point line. That's something that he loves to do, but he's not too good at. But there's been some whisperings that you know, the Kings may be potentially looking at trying to figure out a way to get Rondo at some point, which is something that a lot of people haven't talked about.
You brought up such a very valid point, because I was going to lead right into my next question. You know, Josh Smith, Rajon Rondo obviously still have a very good relationship amongst each other. The Sacramento Kings making this play, and let's be realistic, their power forward situation has been, you know, brick city by committee. I mean, they have not been able to get a solid big in there next to DeMarcus Cousins to take the pressure off of him, rebounding-wise, defensive-wise, and they're going to have to address it at some point. Now, I'm not saying that Josh Smith is the solution, but I will say that the dynamic of him and Cousins could be very intriguing, especially to a guy like Rajon Rondo, because if you're going to start chucking the threes like Josh Smith, at least it's Rajon Rondo getting him the basketball in space so that he can chuck the three rather than him doing that horrendous ISO dribble chuck three type motion that he always loves to do, where he can't give the basketball back to anybody and he shoots. And then I don't think that Rajon would have any issues trying to get the ball to really one of the more formidable front court players in the game, DeMarcus Cousins, who's just straight up been beasting over the last year and a half.
Absolutely. I mean, if there's one guy that could probably figure out a way to get the ball to the right places for a guy like Josh Smith, it's probably Rajon Rondo. I mean, these guys have a great relationship. They've talked about it, how they've loved to play together. I mean, I think that would be a really good tandem, especially, you know, having, you know, DeMarcus Cousins in the middle. He's a guy that can be on that low post. You know, Josh Smith being a kind of a more of a slasher, a guy that can really get to the hoop. You know that Rajon Rondo's the kind of point guard that always has his heads up. He's always going to make sure he's going to get that pass in there, and that could be a force to reckon with, definitely out there in the West Coast.
If you are Danny Ainge, how seriously do you consider the inclination? Remember earlier during the second half of last year, they were throwing around the idea of possibly trading Rajon Rondo for Isaiah Thomas, Ben McLemore, and a draft pick. Now that Thomas is gone, And realistically, if the Celtics have Marcus Smart, Thomas really becomes a formality unless you're just not completely sold. They already re-signed Avery Bradley. So if you were to look at that Sacramento Kings roster, who else would intrigue you that really would be a bolster to that Celtic lineup worth giving Rajon Rondo? I mean, does it truly make a team like the Kings in play, or could we possibly be talking about the Knicks maybe making themselves front runners now with the possibility of open cap space in coming up to this year, coming up to next year? Because remember, Rajon does become a free agent next summer.
Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, obviously the Celtics right now, they have put on the stance the position that they're not willing to trade Rondo unless they're going to get maximum value back. They've already had a lot of pitches thrown their way of guys wanting Rondo, but they haven't bit on that yet because they think they can get a little more out of it. Do I think the Kings have the pieces to land Rondo right now? I'm not sure. I'm not sold on that. I mean, if the Celtics are looking for maybe a couple future first-round picks, maybe Derek Williams, I mean, who knows? Maybe that might be enticing enough, but to me, I don't think that if they're really holding on to that stance, they're looking to get full value. I think they wait a little bit later on in the year, see if they can get a better package from somebody else. That is really I think if Rondo gets moved, it'll be on the trade, right by the trade deadline this next year.
How much do you buy into the loyalty of teams not willing to trade within their own division? Because you notice I just mentioned the New York Knicks, and I wasn't doing that to just quiz you. But I'm just saying, when you look at teams that relatively have certain pieces that might alleviate cap space situations where you could probably take on an expiring contract to open up the floodgates if you are, like you mentioned before, GMs are trying to think 2 moves ahead. And at this particular state, I'm sure there may be a couple of other teams that might be available to figure out a way to get Rajon. But if you're, like, say, the only taker would be, say, the New York Knicks, if you're Danny Ainge, do you nix that notion of the bitter rivalry between the Knicks and the Celtics if you feel like what the Knicks may have to offer is exactly what the Celtics need? And do you do that deal, or do you rest on that traditional side where, hey, screw the Knicks, screw the idea about trading within our own and having this guy wreak havoc on my own team?
I think that it depends. It depends on what the history has been between the 2 teams in question. It depends how previous transactions have gone with those 2 teams in particular. If you've dealt with a team in the past and you did a deal with them, and after a couple of years, you got the bad end of that deal, you may not want to deal with that team again. Because it kind of leaves a bad mark on you. In regards to, especially franchises that have a deep history like the Celtics and the Knicks, I think that adds more flame to the fire. I think that's another thing. It really has to be a situation where PR-wise, on paper and everything else, it's looking really dang good for you to take that kind of deal. Because if that deal goes bad, it's only going to look that much worse.
All right, you're tuned to the Full Court Press. Cal Lee, my man EJ Ayala. We talking hoops, talking about some players might be getting moved, or at least enticing the idea about some players possibly getting moved. And we're just discussing Rajon Rondo. Finally, EJ, let's kind of swing our attention a little bit to the Phoenix Suns. And we talked about them just a little bit earlier with regards to what they did getting Isaiah Thomas. And, listen, many people can argue that they probably have one of the more potent backcourts of backcourts. I mean, they literally have 4 legit scorers: Bledsoe, Dragic, Thomas, and Gerald Green, who they re-signed. I think it's way too much, unless they're planning to run the mini league out there, having 4 point guards, assuming 4 positions, and then maybe having Plumlee as their center. But when you look at this situation with the Phoenix Suns, and clearly it seems like the reason why they did this is because they're uncertain about what's going to happen with Eric Bledsoe. How sure do you think that they're going to be able to reach to some kind of agreement in keeping Bledsoe? Is it really becoming glaringly clear that the Phoenix Suns are realistic in the chance that they may not be able to get this guy, because it seems like Bledsoe is asking for that max deal?
All these moves that the Suns have made right now are not by mistake. I mean, it's a clear indication right now the writing's on the wall. They're not looking to give out a max contract right now on a Bledsoe when they have already other viable options at that position. When you have a guy that's going to be able to produce at a respectable level, that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, you usually go with that option unless this guy's going to be like a superstar. And there's no guarantees that Bledsoe will be. Is he a very good player? Yes. Is he a guy that's shown some promise that could potentially get there someday? Maybe. They're not willing to bank a max contract on that just yet. You may do a deal like that if you already feel like you're on the cusp of that you need to retain that player because you're looking for a championship. They're not in that mode just yet. They're an up-and-coming team right now. They're a team right now that's on the upswing. They're not trying to saddle themselves with a contract that they may look back at and then regret later because they're not going to have the flexibility they're looking for to really add the pieces once they really are ready to contend for a championship.
If you're Eric Bledsoe, how big of a hit have you taken in the fact that you weren't able to stay healthy once that deal went down and he got traded from the Clippers to the Suns? And now that the Suns have gone ahead and added all of these point guards, I mean, how much does it hurt your chances? Is it realistic that we're going to see Bledsoe being moved before the All-Star break in this upcoming season?
I think it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable that he gets moved. He has value in the league right now. There's a lot of teams that are really going to look for a guy like him that's still young, that's a great defender, that knows how to get to the rack. He's definitely going to have value. And I think for the money that he's looking for, especially when you start getting closer towards the trade deadline, there's going to be a team out there that's going to willing to give him that kind of money that he's looking for, and they can make some type of deal work, and the Suns will be able to reap the benefits of getting some assets back in return.
I know I'm throwing this out there as conspiracy theory, but if you are the Indiana Pacers, how tempted are you to try and throw something out there with the Phoenix Suns to see about getting a guy like Bledsoe? Because, my goodness, could you imagine the impact of having a guy like Eric Bledsoe paired up with Paul George and David West? Because I know at some point part of that is going to have to be maybe giving up Roy Hibbert, which I don't know if whether or not the Suns will be enthralled with that in a pick or something of that nature. But if you're the Indiana Pacers, you got to at least try, because if there's anybody that I think could be a serious upgrade or could be offset what Lance Stevenson was going to probably give you if he had re-signed, I mean, Eric Bledsoe could be that guy that's still available.
Well, it would definitely lessen the blow of the Stevenson situation because he's a guy that's a playmaker. He's a guy that can come out there, not only score but make plays, for others. That's something that's going to be seriously lacking in Indiana. I mean, there was many times with the Pacers when you watch them play and their offense would just get stagnant. And unless Lance Stevenson came in and was able to really re-energize that team, they had nothing going for him during those stretches. So would it make a lot of sense? Absolutely. I think it definitely would be something that they have to take a hard look at.
All right, this is my man EJ Ayala representing for Basketball Insiders. If you want to catch my man, he is always available on the Twitter side. You can get at him at EJ_Ayala NBA. He is a Newsline editor. He is the man. I always love bringing my man on here because he not only just makes sense, but everything that he speaks about always seems to be a foreshadowing. I might actually call you the Nostradamus of basketball insiding, because anytime we have a conversation, it seems like some of this stuff does come to fruition.
Hey, well, I'm not gonna knock the nickname, So gotta have a nickname.
Hashtag that up, my friend.
Yeah.
We're trying to cross promote the heck out of these things, but we're trying to get large real quick here.
I'll take it any way it comes. So.
All right, my man EJ Ayala covers NBA, NCAA, international basketball, Newsline editor for Basketball Insiders. We appreciate you coming on to Full Court Press, man. I can't wait to get you back on here so we can continue the further talks as we get closer and closer to the off season. And once again, man, if anything, let people know what you got going on, what you're going to be up to in the next week or so.
In the next week or so, I mean, we're just really going to be trying to wrap up, as much as we can. As far as free agency wise, I mean, there's still a couple things that could happen. I mean, obviously today we obviously heard, Boozer got claimed by the Lakers, so that's going to be a story. I don't know what they're going to do with four power forwards, but that might be something else to take a hard look at too. I mean, you don't have a logjam like that unless you're thinking a couple moves ahead. Maybe you're just trying to acquire a couple of assets in case you make a deal later. So that's going to be something to take a look at. And then there's also a couple other things that I'm kind of keeping my eye on personally myself that maybe I'll just look at going into the season as far as the Bulls, with them being able to land Pau Gasol and also being able to, acquire the best European talent out there with Mirotic. That's going to be something I think that they're going to be a team to really look out for. I mean, of course, you always have the asterisks of what's going to happen with Derrick Rose. Can he stay healthy? But if he can, I think they're going to be a force, out in the East. So there's a couple different things, that we're going to be writing about, taking a look at. But as everything, winds down, of course, we're going to give our impressions on Summer League, and that's going to be something that's going to, it's pretty much winding down right now. But there's a lot of guys that have really impressed there too. So.
All right, my man, EJ Ayala, keeping his finger on the pulse of the NBA. EJ, man, we appreciate you coming on to the Full Court Press, and we look forward to bringing you back on here so we can talk about how great that dynamic is between Carlos Boozer and Kobe Bryant. Actually, I'm sorry, Carlos Boozer and Swaggy P. Gold teeth and tats. That's going to be the byline that you see running across the Staples Center. Gold teeth and tats.
Oh man, Swaggy's always doing his thing. I mean, I've been keeping track of all the stuff that's going out, and in the Drew League and all the other summer leagues as well. So I mean, he's always out there showing out, doing his thing.
Most definitely. So for the Full Court Press, Cal Lee, my special guest, EJ Ayala from Basketball Insiders. We appreciate you guys. You have a great week, and we'll catch up with you next time.